Have you ever felt that kind of heavy loneliness, when you're alone and it feels like something's just missing?
Oh, yeah, we've all been there.
We're going to dig into this book that a lot of you shared with us, Renuka Gavrani's The Art of Being Alone. Solitude is my home. Loneliness was my cage.
Catchy title.
It really is. We're going to deep dive into how she separates, those tough feelings of loneliness from the more positive side of solitude and how we can grow when we're alone.
I think what's so cool about Gavrani's book is that it feels so personal. It's like she's sitting down with us for a real honest chat about her own experiences and what she's learned about, well, being alone.
Yeah, definitely. She's not just throwing out abstract theories.
Not at all. She uses her own life and things she's observed to really dig into why why we often see being alone as such a bad thing.
Today, we're going to explore her thoughts on this, like this crucial difference between loneliness and solitude,
Right.
and pull out her top tips on how to, transform your alone time into a period of, real personal growth.
It's awesome.
It's straight from Gavrani's book. She doesn't just tell us about ideas. She, she shows us how these things played out in her own life,
Yeah.
And the big question she keeps coming back to, and the one we really want to understand today, is why is loneliness such a taboo? Why are we so afraid of just being with ourselves?
Right from the start, it's so interesting how she challenges this whole image of loneliness that we often see, like in movies and books.
That classic lone wolf.
Yeah, exactly. So many stories portray the person who's alone as incomplete, waiting for someone else to come along and, make everything better, like a romantic partner or a best friend.
Oh, totally. It's that whole you complete me thing.
Exactly. Like you need your other half.
Right, right. And she uses those familiar story ideas like the classic rescue narrative or, like you said, the whole other half concept. And her point is that this constant portrayal of loneliness, it makes us think someone else will eventually come and fix us. And when that doesn't happen, which, let's be honest, it often doesn't, those feelings of loneliness just get worse.
It's like setting ourselves up for disappointment.
Exactly.
And remember how she talks about her own longing for a friendship like Joey and Chandler from Friends?
Oh yeah, that classic best friend duo.
Totally. And when her real life friendships didn't quite measure up to that, she felt like something was off.
Like she was missing something.
Exactly. Gavrani points out how media can kind of trick us into wanting these picture-perfect relationships, which in reality are super hard to find.
And then we end up feeling bad about ourselves.
Totally. It's like we're not measuring up.
Right. It all leads to this powerful statement she makes. You choose to believe that you are not enough to change your life all by yourself. It's almost like we're giving up our own power.
Wow, yeah. Like we're waiting for someone else to give us permission to be happy.
Right, exactly.
And, she also talks about how this whole idea of needing someone else plays out as we get older, especially after college.
Oh, yeah.
She has this kind of realistic take on making really close friends after college. She says a lot of interactions become more about networking and careers.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's less about those deep, unconditional bonds that we might have formed when we were younger.
So true. I never really thought of it that way.
Yeah, it's kind of a different perspective. Are we still looking for those friends type best friends even when our lives are so focused on work?
Right. It's like maybe our definition of friendship changes as we get older.
Totally.
And she doesn't stop there. She then reframes everything at the end of this part. Instead of seeing ourselves as this damsel in distress waiting to be rescued.
Yeah, she's all about taking charge.
She's like, imagine yourself as the main character in the movie of your life.
Love that.
It's about, taking control of your story instead of waiting for a supporting character to make it happen.
So true.
And then she goes into another big reason why we're scared to be alone. The pain of hiding who we really are.
This is huge.
She talks about this fear of being called a weirdo.
Yeah.
Which she remembers from when she was a kid, like the lonely kid at school.
Yeah, that label can really stick with you.
She says that this fear makes us try to fit in, even if it means being uncomfortable or hiding our true desires.
It's like we're constantly trying to please everyone else.
Exactly, like saying yes when we want to say no, wearing clothes that don't feel right, or even just agreeing with opinions that aren't really ours, just to be accepted.
Yeah, we all do it to some extent.
And the result of this is a growing gap between who we really are and the image we project to the world. It's like living a double life, and it's not healthy.
No, it's exhausting, and it makes you feel so disconnected from yourself.
And this ties directly into her definition of loneliness. It's not just about not having other people around. for Gavrani, it's about not being able to find yourself, inside.
Yeah, it's like being lost in a role you're playing.
Right. And she gives some relatable examples, like going to events she didn't want to, forcing smiles when she was tired, or dressing in ways that felt fake.
Oh, yeah, I can totally relate to that.
And she realized, I may have become an ideal version for others, but what about myself?
That's a really powerful realization.
It is, and it brings up the question, what are we giving up when we try so hard to please others?
Exactly. Are we sacrificing our own happiness?
Right. Gavrani also points out that when we ignore our inner voice, it stops communicating with us.
So true.
And that's why being alone can feel so painful, because we're stuck with all these unacknowledged feelings and thoughts we've been avoiding.
It's like there's all this stuff bottled up inside.
Exactly. And that's where Gavrani's solutions come in, her roadmap to reclaiming our true selves and changing how we experience being alone.
I like how she frames it as a journey.
Yeah.
So how do we actually be ourselves? Gavrani breaks it down into 3 parts: self-acceptance, self-knowledge, and this interesting concept of defining who and what you are not.
Let's start with self-acceptance.
Okay.
Gavrani's take on self-love is really different.
How so?
She says it's way more than bubble bags and face masks. The typical self-care stuff.
Yeah, that can only go so far.
Right. True self-love, for her, is about really acknowledging and accepting all parts of ourselves, even the ones we don't like.
Even the bad stuff.
Yes, she even says, however ugly or dark or bad your truth is.
Wow, that's pretty radical.
It is. And I think this is a huge part of what she's saying. To have good relationships with others, you have to have a good relationship with yourself first.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But, we often try to present this perfect version of ourselves, even to ourselves.
Totally.
And she's saying that trying to hide our so-called dark side is not only super tiring, but it also doesn't work. She argues that those less than perfect parts of us are just, part of who we are.
And that they make us unique.
Exactly.
That's a good way to look at it.
She even shares this really honest story about how she accepts her own selfishness, like realizing that sometimes she puts her own needs first.
That's brave of her to admit.
It is. And instead of feeling guilty about it, she learned to accept it as a part of herself and actually used it to make better choices.
So it's not about ignoring those parts of ourselves.
No, it's about acknowledging them and understanding how they affect us.
It's interesting that she talks about toxic self-love.
Uh-huh.
It's like, are we just pretending to love ourselves while ignoring things we need to work on?
Right. It's like putting on a happy face without actually addressing the issues underneath.
Exactly.
So real self-acceptance, for Gavrani, is about seeing all of who we are, the good and the bad.
Makes sense.
And she ends this part with a great message. Be proud of what you are and accept every bit of yourself.
I love that.
After we start accepting ourselves, the next step is self-knowledge.
Okay.
Gavrani is clear that this isn't a quick fix. It's a lifelong journey, especially in today's world with all its distractions.
Oh, tell me about it. Staying connected to ourselves takes work.
It does. She doesn't offer easy solutions, but instead gives 2 key practices: coming face-to-face with your mind and knowing thyself.
Come face to face with your mind. Sounds intense.
It does, but her perspective is really helpful. She says our minds aren't necessarily bad, but the discomfort we feel when we're alone is often caused by all the stuff we've buried and haven't dealt with.
Like all the baggage we carry around.
Exactly. And she talks about the freedom that comes from knowing yourself, from facing those fears.
It's like once you see the monster under the bed, it's not as scary anymore.
Right. So she suggests using alone time not to distract ourselves from our thoughts, but to actually examine them.
Interesting.
Yeah, to notice how we react to things, what triggers us, and, the patterns in our thinking.
Like becoming an observer of our own minds.
Exactly. And she points out that many people avoid doing this because it can be uncomfortable to face regrets or past mistakes or negative thoughts about ourselves.
Yeah, that can be really tough.
And she connects this to why we sometimes settle for less in relationships. We might accept the bare minimum from people because it's easier than dealing with our own inner stuff.
It's like we're using relationships as a distraction.
Right. It's a temporary fix, but it doesn't really solve the problem.
No, it doesn't.
Gavrani recommends taking just 10 or 15 minutes a day to just sit with your soul, observe your thoughts without judgment, like being your own therapist.
It's like a mental detox.
Right. Think of it like this. If you keep eating without digesting, you're going to feel sick, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's the same with our minds. If we just keep taking in information without stopping to process it, our thinking gets all messed up.
So we need to give ourselves time to, like, mentally digest.
Exactly. Conscious solitude is crucial for processing and understanding all the stuff that comes at us.
I like that, conscious solitude. Gavrani says that our minds produce what we feed them.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly. Don't just blindly accept everything you hear or read.
Think for yourself.
Yes. And when we're constantly filling our minds with stuff from the outside, we don't have space to explore our own thoughts.
So take some time every day to, like, detox your brain and reflect on what you've learned.
Exactly. Okay, the next practice is called Know Thyself. She talks about a high school teacher who challenged students to speak truthfully about themselves, beyond just basic labels.
I like that challenge.
And she realized that we become so attached to these labels, good, bad, sad, happy, writer, doctor, that we forget who we are beyond those words.
And we start to believe them.
Exactly. And
Wow.
she says we lose that childlike ability to, like, be happy for no reason, to feel good about ourselves, and to not judge ourselves or others so harshly.
That's a shame.
It is. It's like we've forgotten how to just be.
Yeah, we get so caught up in all the labels.
Right. She tells a story about how she was judged for her looks at a family funeral.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and she carried that ugly label with her for years.
That's so sad.
It really highlights how much those external labels can affect us, you know. And she advises us to let go of all the tags and to try not to label others either.
To see people as more than just a single word.
Right. She wants us to be undefinable, with personalities so rich and complex that they take hours to describe.
I love that. It's like, be a mystery. Keep people guessing.
Exactly. Okay, so we've talked about self-acceptance and self-knowledge. Now we're on to the third part of Gavrani's framework. Define who and what you are not.
That sounds different.
It is, but it can be super helpful, especially when you're trying to figure out who you are and it feels overwhelming. Gavrani suggests that it can be easier to start with what you don't like.
Interesting.
Like, even if those things are totally normal or accepted by society.
It's like defining yourself by what you're not.
Yeah, like creating a negative space to highlight the positive.
I get it.
So she says, make a list of things you hate or disagree with and try to understand why you feel that way.
I can see how that would help you understand your own values and choices.
Exactly. It helps you think for yourself and not just follow the crowd.
But, isn't there a catch? I feel like I remember something.
Yes. Gavrani warns us not to, like, shout these opinions from the rooftops. She says, the world is full of clowns, meaning not everyone is open-minded.
So true.
So basically, don't go around picking fights or trying to convert people.
Yet still be true to yourself?
Right. She suggests keeping those maybe controversial opinions to yourself unless someone directly asks.
Makes sense.
And she shares an example from her own life. She never wanted to drink alcohol, even when she was in college and everyone was doing it.
So it's like having strong boundaries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And knowing what you don't want can actually raise your standards in all areas of life.
How so?
Well, you stop settling for less, you're more careful about who you spend time with,
Right.
and you attract better relationships.
It's all about aligning your actions with your values.
Exactly. Okay, are you ready for the next section?
I'm ready. What's next?
All right, so now we're moving on to what Gavrani calls the love for solitude.
Ooh, that sounds intriguing.
She starts it off with a quote by Wayne Dyer. You cannot be lonely if you like the person you're alone with.
Oh, so good.
Isn't it? It's like the whole point of the book in one sentence.
Totally.
She's saying that, like, at the end of the day, we're all on our own journeys.
Mm-hmm.
And we have this choice. Do we suffer because we feel left behind? Or do we embrace this journey of solitude?
Like, see being alone as a chance to grow.
Exactly. She talks about her experience of moving schools a lot when she was younger.
Right.
And losing close friends along the way.
It must have been tough.
It was. But it taught her about the temporary nature of many relationships.
Especially as we go through different stages of life.
Right. It made her realize that those forever friendships we see in movies, they're often not realistic in adult life.
People change, priorities shift.
Exactly. And she had this, like, wake-up call. You are on your own now. Except for you, no one is going to stay by your side forever.
Wow.
It's a bit harsh, but it's also true.
It is.
And so she says, we need to love ourselves enough and create enough space within so that, you know, being alone feels safe and comfortable.
And then being with other people is like a bonus, not a necessity.
Right. A choice, not an escape.
Okay, so after understanding the value of solitude, she gives us some practical tips on how to actually practice the art of being alone.
It's about building a positive relationship with ourselves.
Exactly. And she starts by talking about people like Georgia O'Keeffe and Nikola Tesla, super successful people who loved solitude and used it to be creative and focused.
They understood that being alone doesn't mean being lonely.
It can actually be really productive.
Right. And then she compares that to the world today, especially with social media, which she says is designed to make us feel like we need validation from others.
Always comparing ourselves, feeling inadequate.
Yeah, it's a trap.
A trap.
Gavrani says that people who are really focused on their goals and dreams often choose to be alone so they can concentrate better.
She calls it a new luxury.
Which is so true. In a world full of distractions, being able to focus is a superpower.
It is.
We're constantly bombarded with information and notifications.
It's hard to just be present and control our own thoughts.
And Gavrani's point is that true guidance, that inner wisdom, comes from within.
Not from our phones.
Exactly. Solitude is necessary to hear that inner voice.
Otherwise, we just become copies of the people we follow online.
Okay, so how do we actually practice the art of being alone? Gavrani has some strategies. First up, digest, reflect, and reset.
I like that.
She compares consuming too much information to overeating.
Like mental indigestion.
Yeah, we wouldn't just keep stuffing ourselves with food without digesting it, would we?
No, that would be terrible.
So why do we do that to our minds? Scrolling, reading, watching, without taking time to process.
We need some mental downtime.
Yes. Gavrani calls it conscious solitude. That time we set aside to let our brains digest all the information we've taken in.
Without any more distractions.
Exactly. And she reminds us that what we consume affects what we produce.
Like junk in, junk out.
Right. Don't just believe everything you read or hear.
Think critically.
Yes. And when we're always taking in stuff from the outside, we don't have any space to explore our own thoughts.
It's like our brains are full.
So Gavrani's message is to detox your brain every day. Spend some time alone to reflect and filter out all the noise.
Okay, I can get on board with that. What's the next strategy?
This one might surprise you. The art of getting bored.
Bored. Like on purpose.
Exactly. She talks about how many creative people get their best ideas when they're relaxed and not even trying to think of anything specific.
Interesting. So it's like when we're not busy, our brains can wander and make connections.
Yeah. And she says that all our busyness and constant consumption actually prevent that from happening.
We need to create space for those aha moments.
Right. She introduces this cool Italian concept, dolce far niente. It means the sweetness of doing nothing. It's about being present without distractions. No phone, no books, just you and your thoughts.
That sounds hard.
It can be. But it's not about being lazy. It's about giving your mind a break.
Like allowing it to rest and recharge.
Exactly. And, sometimes we avoid boredom by jumping into unhealthy relationships or constantly looking for distractions.
It's easier than just being with ourselves.
Right. But Gavrani says that boredom can actually be a type of meditation.
Really?
Yeah, it builds self-control because you're resisting that urge to be entertained all the time.
So when you practice being bored, you're training your mind to be okay with silence and stillness.
Exactly. And over time, that allows your mind to wander and come up with new ideas.
It's like our brains need those quiet moments to work their magic.
Okay, the third part of practicing the art of being alone is called learn to belong to yourself.
That sounds deep.
It is.
Yeah.
She's talking about how relationships and life circumstances always change.
People come and go.
Right. So it's crucial to develop this inner sense of belonging so we don't feel lost when things change.
We need to be our own home base.
Exactly. She gives this example of a friend who felt empty when her long-term boyfriend moved away.
She was relying on him for her happiness.
Right. And Gavrani says we should make your life like a garden with lots of different interests and hobbies to keep ourselves excited and engaged.
I love that metaphor.
It's about having a rich inner world so you don't depend on others for your happiness.
And then when you do connect with people, it's genuine, not out of neediness.
Yes. And she stresses that we need to find reasons to enjoy our own company because, life doesn't hand them to us on a silver platter.
You have to create them for ourselves.
Exactly. It's an ongoing project.
Okay, so what happens after we've learned to like being alone?
Gavrani suggests we make a new best bud, and it's not who you might think.
I'm intrigued.
It's not about finding another person to fill that role. She talks about how, in her 20s, she chose to focus on her goals, instead of always going out with friends who had different priorities.
So she's saying, make your goals your best friend.
Exactly. See your alone time as a chance to work on those goals. to get closer to your dreams.
It's like you're spending quality time with your future self.
Right. And she emphasizes that we need to shift our mindset to look at being alone through the lens of that future successful version of ourselves.
It's like that future you is counting on you to put in the work now.
Totally. And she ends this section with this image of starting a self-improvement streak with your dreams, where each step forward creates a positive memory in that relationship with your goals.
So the more you work on your goals, the stronger your bond with them becomes.
Exactly. Okay, now let's talk about building a dream life plan.
Awesome.
Gavrani starts with a simple but powerful question. If you don't know where you want to go, how will you ever reach there?
So true. We need a destination in mind.
She challenges us to think about what our own dream life really looks like, not just a cookie-cutter version based on what society tells us.
It's about defining success on our own terms.
Exactly. She asks things like, how much money do you need to be at peace? Or what brings you mental stability?
It's about figuring out what truly matters to us.
And she emphasizes that this kind of independent thinking comes from solitude.
Away from all the outside noise.
She talks about her own struggle with relying on others' opinions and being afraid to make her own decisions.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that.
And she asks us, straight up, aren't you tired of wishing to be like everybody else?
That hits home.
She's basically saying, don't live someone else's life, live your own.
Okay, so how do we do that? How do we build this dream life?
Well, Gavrani says the first step is figuring out what we don't like about our current lives.
Interesting. So focus on the negative first.
In a way, yeah. Acknowledge the stuff that's making you unhappy.
Because that dissatisfaction can be a powerful motivator.
Exactly. And she challenges us to come up with at least 2 solid reasons why we want to change things in all areas of life.
So personal, professional, emotional, everything.
And she stresses that consistent daily action is key to making those changes happen.
It's not a one-time thing, it's a lifestyle.
Right. So she gives us an assignment. Write down 5 things you dislike about your current life.
Put it in writing, make it real.
And she points out that this honest self-assessment is super important for bridging the gap between where we are and where we want to be.
It's about being real with ourselves.
And she even warns against what she calls toxic self-love, which is basically being so positive that you ignore the areas where you need to improve.
It's like sweeping problems under the rug.
Okay, now that we have our list of dislikes, Gavrani's action plan has 3 steps. Step 1 is the power of one thing.
One thing.
Yeah, she warns us not to try to change everything at once because that's overwhelming and often leads to giving up.
Oh, I've totally been there. Too many goals and then nothing gets done.
Right. So she says focus on one thing at a time.
Makes sense. Small steps.
Exactly. It's easier to make one change at a time, and seeing progress in that one area boosts your confidence.
It's like you're proving to yourself that you can change.
Exactly. And she shares her own story of focusing on writing just 1 article a day on Medium, which eventually led to amazing opportunities, and her becoming an author.
That's inspiring.
It shows that consistent small actions can really add up. So, take your list of dislikes and pick one big issue to tackle first.
Got it. What's next?
Step 2. Set action goals.
Here.
Gavrani points out that this big issue you've chosen might be something you avoid dealing with, which is why you might avoid being alone.
Oh, that's so true. When I'm alone with my thoughts, that's when all the stuff I've been avoiding comes up.
Exactly. So it's even more important to focus on just one improvement at a time so you don't get overwhelmed.
One step at a time.
And she distinguishes between vague goals and action goals.
What are action goals?
They're goals that clearly define the daily action you'll take.
So it's not just, I want to be healthier. It's, I'm going to walk for 30 minutes every day.
Exactly. She even talks about having a WhatsApp group with just herself to hold herself accountable.
That's a cool idea.
She's basically saying that just having big goals in your head doesn't often lead to actual change.
You need a concrete plan.
Right. So define one action goal related to your big issue and commit to doing it every day.
Got it. What's step 3?
Step 3 is know your nature and sync your activities. This is about working with your natural rhythms.
Like your body clock.
Exactly. We all have times when we're naturally more energetic and productive.
Some people are morning people, some are night owls.
Right. And Gavrani says that trying to force yourself into a routine that doesn't match your natural tendencies can make you feel drained and demotivated.
Like trying to be a morning person when you're really a night owl.
Yeah, she tried that, and it didn't work for her. She read all the books, tried all the techniques, but her body just wasn't having it.
So we need to figure out what works best for us.
Exactly. Self-improvement should be enjoyable and sustainable.
Not a constant struggle.
Right. She gives examples of how she now plans her writing and exercise routines around her natural energy levels.
That makes sense. Work with your body, not against it.
Exactly. And the advice is to be flexible and adapt as your preferences change.
Okay, so we've talked about self-acceptance, self-knowledge, and taking action. What's next?
Now, she focuses on how to make your alone time addictive.
Addictive, alone time, that sounds almost impossible.
I know, right? But she's talking about shifting our perspective. Instead of dreading alone time, we should look forward to it.
So turn it into something we crave.
Exactly. And she suggests a few ways to do this. First, create multiple sources of joy.
I like that.
She reminds us of all those things we've always wanted to do, hobbies, skills, interests, but haven't made time for.
Even though we spend hours watching TV or scrolling online.
Exactly. And she compares the natural joy and curiosity of children to the, sad state of many adults who rely on external things for entertainment.
It's like we